Morning, everyone. My name is Monica Young. I am the host of the GREI Club, which is Global Real Estate Investor Club, and also I'm the broker of Just Global Inc. Thank you very much for joining us on a beautiful day of Saturday. And today, we're very excited that our friend, Mr. Louis Mallow, is going to be presenting to us about the latest regarding what you have to focus as a landlord in 2022. And before that start, I'm going to give you a very quick update on the market of real estate trend in the Bay Area. Then Lou's going to speak, and please save all your questions at the end, and you can type in the chat box. Yes, so you might have heard from your friends and people that that are buying houses. The market is very, very active now. And literally, there are about like 450 single homes on the market in Santa Clara County. So it used to be, before the pandemic time, we have about 1,200 plus. So now it's very, very tight inventory. So each of the homes that we've been working with the buyers, they have multiple offers. Very, very intense competition. Especially, you might have heard there's going to be 3 or 4 rate hikes this year. So because many people, especially the first-time home buyer, and they, of course, they're buying a home that they plan to live in for a long time, and they're trying to buy before the interest rate go up. And if you know anybody who are buying now, you probably should remind them to act sooner too, because when the interest rate goes up by 0.5%, essentially you pay about 5% more on the purchase price because your mortgage would be higher. So limit the type of budget you can spend on the home. And if it goes up by 1% in interest rate, your purchase power will go down by 10%. Well, there are 4 issues that have been, we've been noticing on, like the economy. Basically, you notice that with the current situation, we have been recovering quite well. But of course, with the latest Omicron, it's kind of still make the retail and the travel industry kind of really kind of struggling. And other, structural changes you might have observed is the SB 9 and 10. I got a lot of friends in the industry that SB 9, essentially is like if you want to build more ADU or, having like 2 houses on a lot, the government really encourage you to do so because we have a housing crisis, being that there's very strong demand but not enough supply. So be able to build 2 homes on a lot or subdivide your lot if you have big enough lot. Then you can sell it as 2 separate single homes. That kind of is a very positive news to stimulate the supply of the market. And number 3, the housing remains strong. So as I have introduced, many people are still buying and they're really anxious to get in the market. Essentially, I have to say that very strong growth. Year to year, 2021 to 20, it's gone up almost anywhere 16 to 18%. You'll see the number in the next slide. And what does that mean? Overall, California, we've seen that a lot of activities, more sales, and the price will continue to go up in 2022. Next slide. So, we are in the Santa Clara County. So that's why, really pay a lot of attention to about the housing trend. So you can see that year to year, is 1.62 million versus the median home price, 1.37 million. It's gone up almost close to 19%. And the home on the market is really a lot shorter. Essentially, if you price it right, most of the listings probably would have offers within a week. So a home average day on the market is about 17 days. And then overbid is very serious, is 107. Say, it's not unusual to see homes that bid up 100K, 20, 200K, and I have placed offer and I got the offer at $820,000 over the asking. And the supply is very limited. It could only last for about 1.3 million. And the sales, like become, home price become more and more expensive, like 3 million or 5 million over. As you see, the number's gone up a lot. Next. So the Mid-Peninsula, as you know, that a lot of people either work in the city, San Francisco, or, like maybe one work in the South Bay, one work in San Francisco. They like to buy in the Mid-Peninsula. And because like the geographical location, one is on the ocean, one side, and the other is on a mountain. So it limits the land supply. And so the Mid-Peninsula market is even more competitive. The median home price gone up, almost like now it's over 2 million in the Mid-Peninsula. And also a lot of overbid, in terms of pricing. And housing unit, because it's not supplied to be so abundant, so it makes it very serious competition. And most of the overbid is like 107%. Next slide. Next slide, please. So Alameda, basically for the East Bay is 1.3 million as medium home price, and the medium condo price is about 655. From what we see in the last quarter of 2021, townhome and condo are not moving as fast, but then starting the new year, especially townhome and condo with good schools, it sells very fast. Again, multiple offer. And we've been actually having a lot of buyers to buy new homes, like new townhomes, new condos. We just got some into contract. And if you have family or friends, a first-time home buyer, we still really encourage them to look at new homes, because basically the bidding wall is less severe. Sometimes builders still need you to bid, but then we might be able to get some discount if it is towards the fiscal year end, the calendar quarter, like right now, end of February would be a calendar quarter end. So we might still be able to get some good price. But overall, the East Bay is also very active. Many people are now working remotely. So for them, geographically, they can work in San Ramon, they can work in Placenton, Fremont, or Union City. So East Bay also very active. Next. Well, the housing need is definitely more urgent than ever. You can see that, this gives you an idea. Like, you see a lot of people moving out, 276,000, but it's throughout California. Some of my clients, they may retire, they want to move out of state, or some younger generation, they move out of state to Washington, Texas, or Florida because of the cost of living, cost of homes. But still, because of the weather and the education and the opportunities here, we still have a lot of people coming in. And in terms of like the natural next generation growth, if you have kids, they get married, they need to buy homes, new forming of household. So you can see that actually population growth is the highest since 43, but still, like we can see that there's still natural growth because of the general, good environment of California. Next. Well, sorry that it might be a little blur, for the 2021, this was done like end of 2021. So forecast, we still think the sales might slow down a bit because of tight inventory. However, for the medium home price, it will continue to go up. The medium home price would be about 834,000. We're expecting about 5.2% change, positive growth. Affordability index will continue to go lower because like homes become more expensive. Only 23% of people maybe afford to buy a home. And the interest rate expect, the association expect to grow up by about 0.5% for 2022. So this gives you an idea. So next slide, we're going to share with you what we have coming up. We are doing in the Bay Area, but at the same time, you might have heard that we've done a lot of out-of-state investment because we run the investor club. For many people, in order to really get cash flow, we might have to go out of state now because like Bay Area, California overall becomes more expensive. So we're talking about Texas, Las Vegas, Orlando, Tampa, you know, like we have opportunities in those out of state. In case if you're interested, please feel free to reach out to me. So we have a few listings coming up next. This is the home that is going to be listed, I think within like maybe 2 weeks or so. This is the single home in South San Jose, and it's about 1,547 square feet. It's really nice and newer home, 1984, 3 bedrooms with 3 full baths. And the seller have not set a price yet. I think the price probably would start it at about 1.1 million, but it depends on the market momentum. So far, you know, we see a lot of activities in South San Jose too, because some of the listings that we sold like in December, November, we still have multiple offers. Many of the tech people now, they're moving into South San Jose as well, because now they can do work remote, only need to be like maybe 1, 2, or 3 days in the office. So commuting would not be so much a concern like before. Next. So we do have like a newer home that was built like about like 2015. It's a newer home in Campbell area, single home. And that is going to be coming up on the market, I think maybe about like middle of February or so. And the price not been set, but like based on the comps where we pull, we think this home will be able to get sold for about 1.5 to about 1.6, if not higher. Yeah, so if you're interested, contact us. Maybe we can discuss with you, you know, on any maybe off-market type of arrangement. Next one. So this is a beautiful triplex. Everything is fully remodeled. It's in Stockton, and the price is very attractive because each of the unit is 2-1-2-1, and some of them actually have a backyard. And you know, fully remodeled, as you can see the photos, it looks very nice and is currently tenanted with about 5% return. And it's not on the market yet, but basically, I think the landlord, they are trying to do 1031 exchange for maybe single home. So I think this is definitely a good opportunity because as I observe, you know, the Stockton market also gone up a lot in rent. So currently the rent's still kind of below market. Yes. So I'm Monica, and also I have partner like Carl and also some other teammates. If you have any question or interest, please feel free to reach out to us. And then we'll be happy to kind of give you overview of the market and answer any kind of real estate questions in the Bay Area or potential out-of-state investment. Okay, so I finished with my presentation, and I'm going to introduce Luis, and Carl is going to load up Luis' presentation. Mr. Luis Mello is the president and broker of Atlantis Property, which is located in Los Gatos. And Luis started the company back in year 2000, and the company has grown. I just learned that, you know, he's currently managing over 1,600 properties and located different counties such as Santa Clara, San Mateo, Santa Cruz, or even, you know, in the Monterey counties area. And Luis has a strong background in real estate and finance, and he has been the past president of NARPM Santa Clara County Charter. Please give a very good and big welcome to Luis. Thank you. Luis, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me? Great. So yeah, again, I'm Luis Mello with Atlantis Properties. I've been doing property management for at least 20 years now. I started the company in 2000, and we've started in the San Jose area. We've grown to manage properties all through the peninsula, South San Jose, up to about the Fremont border and Santa Cruz County, all the way down to Watsonville. So we manage quite a territory. So today I'll kind of go over some of the things that are going on with the post-moratorium that ended on September 30th, and maybe kind of discuss if it really ended or not, or if it's gotten actually worse for rent collections. And some of the issues that landlords are having right now with collecting rents. They can't get their tenants out, and we're kind of just go over a lot of that because I think that's what is in most people's mind right now is if they're not getting their rents, and what do you do or what can you do? We can go on to the next slide. So our portfolio, we manage anything from single family homes, condos, townhomes, small apartment buildings, and we have some office and retail, small centers. So we encompass that all into our portfolio, but our majority is residential. Half, I would say, single families, and the other half from multi-units, duplexes to fourplexes and small apartment buildings that we manage all throughout the Bay Area. Next slide. So my background, I have quite a background in real estate. I've been doing probably real estate and property management in some form or another since my early 20s. So I started in the Bay Area. I lived in Hawaii, did commercial real estate in Honolulu, Hawaii, and then back to California, where I also worked in finance for a while, but got back into real estate full time and started the management company, which is, I love real estate, so that's what I do now. And I really enjoy it. And we have a great team in our office, and it's continuing to grow. Next slide. So the areas we serve, I kind of went over that a little bit earlier, but we do San Mateo County, Santa Clara County, and Santa Cruz County, and pretty much every city in those counties. So if you have a property, you have a client, or anybody who needs property management, those are the areas that we serve, and we can help you in those areas. Next slide. So these are probably the latest issues that is in a lot of people's mind. So we had an eviction moratorium until September 30th this last year, and everybody thought that on October 1st, everything would be back to normal. Well, it really isn't. So even though the moratorium ended on September 30th, if you manage or if you own quite a few properties, if your tenants weren't paying, you were able to serve 15-day notices back then. There were a different variety of 15-day notices. On October 1st, we went back to a 3-day notice. There's a post-moratorium period from October 1st till March 31st. And during this period, you now can serve a 3-day notice to pay or quit if the tenant is not paying their rent. But there's some caveats. So if on that 3-day notice, the tenant has 15 business days to apply for state rent relief. And in all honesty, the landlord should apply for it immediately after they give that tenant that 3-day notice. It'll get the clock started, and then once the tenant either fills out their side of the application or doesn't, that's where the timeline starts. And you will not be able to evict anybody until you do your best efforts as a landlord to get rent relief from the state of California or other means. If you try to go to an eviction attorney to file an eviction right now and you just say you served a 3-day notice and the 15 days are up, well, it doesn't mean anything really. So you have to wait for the state rent relief website to either deny that applicant because they filled out their application and maybe they don't qualify, or non-responsive mode where the tenant's not responding or the tenant never filled out an application. At that point, one of those two modes is when an eviction attorney will really take your case and evict a tenant for non-payment of rent or file the unlawful detainer. Some of the new things that are coming up this year that you have to include in your lease, there's a new mold pamphlet disclosure that you should include in your lease. I know we use the California Association of Realtors form, so that's automatically included in there. California Apartment Association also has that, so if you use their forms, definitely make sure you're including that in the new leases for 2022. Housingiskey.com is the state rent relief website. If you've had a non-paying tenant, I'm sure you probably have already used this website. This is where you apply as the landlord for rent relief, and the tenant themselves will also have to fill out their side of the application on this site. Once you do fill out for rent relief, the tenant continues not to pay. You want to make sure that you follow up with the state site. Right now, there's such a backlog of applications. It's taking months and months for them to even pick up that application and do anything with it. I mean, it's a hit and miss. Some of them take longer, others get picked up faster. I have not been able to figure out why, but it could just be that the caseworkers either pick up their applications, some don't, or some are delayed. It's up in the air as to what's going on over there. So I kind of went over evicting the tenant for non-payment of rent. If your property is in a rent-controlled district like the city of San Jose, anytime you serve a notice to quit, either a 3-day notice for non-payment of rent, notice to perform or quit, or notice for termination of the tenancy for any of the reasons allowed, you also should file that notice with that jurisdiction. Because if you don't and you go to evict, and if you haven't done that, you won't be able to evict. You have to start all over again. So be very careful what city your property is in, if it's under rent control, if you're required to submit copies of any notices you submit to the tenant, to the city as well. You want to make sure you get all that done, because when you go to an eviction attorney, these are all the questions they're going to ask, and they're going to ask for your entire file. If you don't have it correct, guess what? You're going to have to start all over again. So it can be very time consuming, costly, and meanwhile, the tenant's not paying the rent. We go to the next screen. So see, these are some of the cities that we manage properties in that have rent control, and some of the percentages of rent control within those city limits, or if the properties fall under the rent control, like San Jose is 3 units or more. And then you have Mount View, that's under CPI. Los Gatos is 3 units or up, they're 5% per year. And then East Palo Alto. So if you own properties in these areas, these are things to consider when you're raising the rent right now. Next slide. And then this is just a little map of those cities with the rent control. And next slide. So again, this is more information on the cities with rent control. Some of the city of San Jose has the tenant protection ordinance. Not only does it have the rent control, but it also has only certain reasons that you can evict a tenant, and for lease violations, or if you're taking a property off the market, or anything else that you want to look at the reasons of why you can actually get a tenant out. Given the state of how things are right now, before you even think about getting a tenant out of a property, you should consult with your eviction attorney, because in all honesty, it's going to cost you money, but you want to make sure that the paperwork is done right from the beginning. Otherwise, it can be more costly in the end if you didn't do it right. And next slide. So this is, again, city of San Jose. It kind of just goes through the just cause reasons on tenants for evicting. And then there's the just cause reasons that you actually have to do a payout to the tenant if you want to get them out. So reasons 9 through 13 are just cause reasons, but you have to cash out the tenant in order to get them out of the apartments or wherever they live. Next slide. And Mount View is also under rent control. Same thing with Mount View. If you serve notices to quit, 3-day notices, the city requires that you upload copies of those notices to their website. Next slide. If your property doesn't fall under a local jurisdiction of rent control, if it's 2 units or more and it's older than 15 years, it's going to fall under the AB 1482 state rent control. So every year around April, if you actually are a member of the California Apartment Association, they post that CPI, and it goes by county now. So this last year from April to April, it's 4% in Santa Clara County. I believe Santa Cruz County is the same. So it's 5% plus CPI. So if you haven't raised your rent and you want to raise your rent right now, and it falls under AB 1482 rent control, you can do 9%, let's say in Santa Clara County. And so it'll get adjusted again in April or May of this year. And most likely that CPI, I would imagine, is probably going to hit 5% or more, but there's a cap of 10%. So regardless if the CPI goes over 5%, you're only going to be able to do 10% max. So keep an eye on that. But if you are raising rents right now, definitely look at the county you're in. And if your property falls under this, you want to look at the CPI. So you're going to take the 5% plus the CPI. you can do a 30-day notice of rent increase, and make sure you use the appropriate form that has the AB 1482 disclosure on it. Properties that are exempt from AB 1482 are single family homes. Homes obviously built less than 15 years ago. Section 8 is not under AB 1482. We still raise Section 8 rents more than rent control allows. And obviously the caveat with Section 8 is they will determine if they will allow the rent increase that you request, but many times we've been able to raise rents that were very low on Section 8 and raise them up to market, and they will allow it. So I guess the one good thing about Section 8. And next slide. So this just continues on after AB 1482 just cause. There's only certain reasons too that you can get a tenant out of a property if they fall under AB 1482. Years ago in California, if a property was not under a local rent control, even a duplex or even an apartment building, let's say in Sunnyvale, didn't fall under rent control, you used to be able to give a 60-day notice, no cause notice for them to leave. Well, no longer is that the case. If the property falls under AB 1482, which mostly anything duplex and higher falls, these are the reasons that you can give a tenant to vacate or evict. And basically, a lot of them are just lease violations, which in reality right now is probably one of the best ways to actually get a tenant out of a property, is to serve them with warning notices, 3-day notices to perform or quit. And those are really the best reasons to get a tenant out right now versus non-payment of rent. So if you have a tenant who's violating their lease, is causing havoc on the property, is disturbing the peace, if you can get proof of those violations, serve them with warning notices, then a 3-day notice to perform or quit, and then consult with your eviction attorney to see if you have enough paperwork in order to get them out based on the lease violation. So next slide. And then these are some of the reasons that you can get a tenant out if you're basically going to cash them out of a property. So let's say you want to move into one side of one of your apartments and you want to give that tenant notice, then you have to give them a 1 month's relocation fee. That's under AB 1482 just cause. Next slide. This again goes just kind of a little chart of properties that are exempt or non-exempt. It's just kind of it's a good flow chart to look at depending even where your property is at. Make sure that last year in 2020, you were supposed to give your tenants, let's say in a single family home, the notice of exemption from AB 1482. If you did not do that and you still haven't done it, you really should maybe put that tenant on a new lease and include the disclosure. Because if you did not do that and you have a single family home, technically that property is not exempt from AB 1482 and would fall under the rent control and just cause. So that's something you want to look at your leases and see if you've updated them. Next slide. And then going to fair housing and legal, the tenants have a lot of resources for free help. They can go to legal aid. They have city housing departments. The landlord is not so privy to free help. They have to call their attorneys and pay for it. So be very careful when you're screening your applicants that you treat everybody the same. I'm sure everybody knows about service animals. They're labeled as service, therapy, companion animals. You can't take extra rent or extra security deposits on those pets. Home daycares are also protected as long as they have the proper licensing. Notices served, make sure you're serving the correct notices. You're notifying the appropriate city departments of copies of those notices. Small claims court, I've had to go to small claims quite often for security deposit disputes. You want to make sure you have all your paperwork in order, your pictures. The best thing you can do is screen your applicants up front to avoid hassles down the line. I mean, I can't tell you, I'd rather leave a house vacant for another few weeks or even a month to find the right tenant versus being desperate and renting to someone who has bad credit or is borderline, only to find out that, in the next few months they stop paying the rent. And especially now, you can't even get them out. So be very careful, put your standards on your application process, but follow them thoroughly for everybody the same. If somebody has bad credit or they have, collections and this and that, honestly, you're better off just denying them and moving on to the next application. You want to get somebody who's credit worthy and, doesn't have a story up front. You'll find that people who are not credit worthy, but say they have great landlord references, tend to be late payers and will continue their same cycle. So screening up front is, is my number one thing. If I see somebody that doesn't qualify or is borderline, I would just rather deny them and pass it. And of course, you always have to consider Section 8 applicants. I can't tell you how many times we get calls throughout the day and the people ask, oh, do you take Section 8? I'm not sure if they're testers or if they're just trying to find some people that will say no so they can go to some legal counsel and file a lawsuit against you for denying them for even applying. Next chart. And so some of the trends that we've seen, even in December, we started to rent all our vacancies. Our vacancy rate right now in our portfolio is probably down at its lowest than it's been pre-COVID. I think we're even a little bit less than 2%. Last year and in 2020, we gave a lot of move-in bonuses for leases that we signed, especially the apartments. We were giving 1 month's free rent, 1.5 months. Some properties we even went as drastic as 2 months. And what we did with those move-in bonuses is we kept the higher rent on the lease, and then we took the move-in bonus and divided it by 12 months. So the bonus was really spread over 12 months. So the net effective rent to that tenant was lower. But at the end of the lease, those bonuses are dropping off and the rents are stabilizing. So now, let's say a rent started at $2,500, but yet you gave a bonus of $200 a month. Now that their lease is up, their rent is $2,500. And if you were to sell or raise the rent on that property, you would raise it on the $2,500, or you could just basically renew the lease at the same rate. If you wanted to do another lease renewal and still give them a bonus, I would still give it a bonus, because it's important if the property's falling under rent control that you want to keep that top rent on the lease, not only for raising future rents, but obviously if you sell that property and it's a multi-unit property, the value of the property is obviously based on the lease rents. We're starting to give rent increases again, so very important that you use the right notice. Right now, and if it's under AB 1482, if we can give the full 9%, that's what we'll do. If you think the full 9% will take it above market and the tenants will leave, then of course don't do that. I mean, raise it, 3, 4, 5%, whatever makes sense. And if you want to keep your tenants, maybe you don't want to raise the full 9%. You want to just raise it 5% or even 3%, or sign a new lease if they sign a brand new 1-year lease at the same rate to keep them in place. Tenant retention is very important. Avoiding vacancies, if you have good tenants, I think it beats putting in a $100 increase only to find out the tenant's going to move, and then you got to spend $10,000 to fix up the place, do carpets and paint, and then the property stays vacant for another month or two. That $100 has been wiped out forever. And then one thing that I'm always telling our clients is make your properties look nice and fresh and clean and updated. I know it costs money to put in new flooring and paint and do whatever you need to do to make that house or apartment look nicer than everybody else's, because yours are going to rent first and you're going to attract better tenants that want to take better care of the property if you already show pride of ownership and that you took the efforts to make it look really nice, and you're going to get the higher rents as well. And next slide. And we belong to quite a few associations: the National Association of Residential Property Managers, California Apartment Associations, Santa Clara County Board of Realtors. We use the leases and forms from both the California Association of Realtors and the California Apartment Association. And sometimes when we have questions, we'll direct them to the Apartment Association, or of course we have our attorneys that we also go to for answers. But it's nice to be a part of professional groups that you can reach out and get information. And sometimes they reach out to each other and reach out to me, and I reach out to them. But you have to be part of some group that you can reach out for help, because things change so fast the last couple of years that, it was almost difficult just keeping up with all the information and the constant changes. Next slide. And thank you for listening to me, and hopefully we'll have a lot of good questions, and we'll have some answers for you.
Yes, thank you. That's very, very informative, Louis. And so, again, I want to emphasize that we're going to send out a copy of the presentation together with the recording today to everybody who register for this event, probably by early next week. And so I do have a couple questions that actually some of my clients sent it to me ahead of time, and Louis is kind enough to address some of them already, but I do have some follow-up questions.
Great.
So the first one is from Carol. Carol is the owner of multiple units, and it is an apartment building in Hayward that she owns, and the tenant has not been paying rent. So basically, she also claimed that she has COVID. She does not want to speak to the landlord, and of course, with COVID, you don't want to get very close, according to what she said. So, but then for the rental relief, you mentioned that they have to apply for the HousingKey.com site to submit the application. So basically, she just has to show the landlord that she has been applying for it, but then can the landlord ask for any kind of proof from them to show that they have been unemployed or having any financial difficulty? And can she start posting an eviction notice?
Yeah, so the first thing to do, regardless if they have COVID or not COVID, if they didn't pay their rent, you want to serve that 3-day notice to pay or quit. If it's in Stockton, I'm not sure of local, if it's a home, it's probably not under rent control anyway, but I'm not sure about rent control in Stockton. But serve that 3-day notice. The landlord should, landlord.
This one is in Hayward, yeah.
Hayward, okay, I believe Hayward has rent control, but regardless, you should still serve a 3-day notice and file the application, the landlord application, on HousingIsKey.com. You want to get that application filed, because when you do file it, you're going to put the tenant's information in there, and then email it's going to go to them. They have to fill out their portion, and then the cases will be linked. Or if they have already filled out an application and you go in and fill yours, you're going to call the Housing is Key so they can link the applications together. Now, it's going to take a lot more than probably 15 days or even 20 days or a month for the state or anybody to even pick up that application and work on it. That's just the fact right now. After late September, early October, so many people filed rent relief applications. We actually received probably over $500,000 in rent relief funds for our clients, and we were getting paid out like towards August, like July, August, September. We were getting like a year's full rent for some of the people that hadn't paid, and then but those same people continue not to pay. So they got served 3-day notices in October, and now we're waiting months before they're even picking up an application or working on them. They're probably short-staffed, I imagine, but they've had an overwhelming amount of applications. And so here we are, you're not getting your rent. It's 3, 4, 5 months now again, and you can't evict them because you have to show that either the state has denied that applicant, they'll show a denied status, or non-responsive, meaning the tenant is not cooperating with the state on providing information. If you don't have one of those two statuses, the eviction attorneys, I've been told, won't file the unlawful detainer. So that's a challenge, because here is the state is behind. They're not picking up the applications. They won't do anything. I mean, if you call them, they'll just tell you just have to wait your turn. And here you are with tenants not paying their rent. And so are we really over the moratorium, or has it even gotten worse? I mean, it's almost seems like it's gotten worse. So I think you just have to be patient. My only concern is, the state most likely will pay out that money, but my concern now is, I think you've seen articles that the state is either getting low on funds, or will all these applications that are filed, will all these people be paid out, or will the landlord be stuck, 4 or 5 months, 6 months later, only to be told by the state, sorry, we ran out of money. Now it's your problem, and you got a tenant in there that owes another 6 months of rent, and then you'll probably be able to evict them, but that'll probably take another 2 or 3 months to get them out. So that's my biggest concern right now for those that are not paying, and the state either runs out of funds by the time they catch up to all these applications, and then the landlord is stuck. So that's a concern.
Mm. Yeah, I totally share that. So we have advice from other attorneys before that they said if the owner decided to take it off the rental market, they decide to sell it, or kind of like maybe some say I'm moving it. So would that be a reason that they can try to evict the tenant sooner than later, or they still have to wait for the court to respond?
No. So if you, as an owner, want to move back into your home, you can still give a 60-day notice to terminate the tenancy for, let's say, a home. That's a reason to get them out. So it doesn't matter if they didn't pay their rent or not. But you should make sure that you do move back into the house, because if they come back and try to discover that you just did it to get them out versus not because they didn't pay their rent, then maybe you could have a bigger problem on your hands if a legal aid service files a lawsuit on behalf of the tenant, that they just use that excuse to get you out. You can also give a notice if you're selling the property. That's still something right now that you can do for, if you're going to sell your property, give them a 60-day notice. I'd put the reason on it. Now that's for homes. Those are properties that don't fall under AB 1482. And then of course, the lease violations, if they are not paying their rent, but they're doing drugs, or they're destroying your property, or if you can prove that they're violating the lease in any form or another, they're subletting. I've gotten people out on subletting that were not paying their rent, or flat out maybe just call them up and say, hey, I'll give you $5,000 to get the hell out of here, and see if they'll do a cash for keys to get them out faster. It may be cheaper in the long run, even though you hate to do something like that, but that may work. If a owner wants to sell a property, and you can give it before September 30th, you couldn't give a notice. That really wasn't one of the reasons. What I did is I called up the tenants, and I go, eventually the landlord's going to sell the home, whether you're in it or not. And once this moratorium is over, you're going to have to leave anyway. So I told the landlord, hey, let me offer them a couple $1,000, $3,000 if they would leave, and within 30 days or even sooner. And most people cooperated, and they actually left and took the cash. So if you get a little creative with the market the way it is, but just be very careful that you don't violate any laws, and it looks like you're trying to push them out the door and put them on the street, because that's where these legal aid services will really help these people, these tenants, to come back at you as a landlord.
Got it. Yeah. So those are really good strategy. Like you said, you got to be creative.
Yeah.
So I think you have addressed the question from Jenny as well as Carol, and I still have another question from Kathy. Mm-hmm. Tenant did not pay rent for 4 months. So basically, she has to file that home key service online, like you said, as landlord, and also have the tenant have to fill out the information. Yeah. So if they are applying for a rental assistance, they still do not have to pay, right? Some of them, they may not initiate to pay again. So basically, we still have to wait for the government's assistance to come back in.
Yeah, and you definitely want to file that application, because like I said, you won't be able to evict that person if they're not paying their rent, unless you make efforts to try to collect from the state, from the rent relief program, and get those either denied or approved, or obviously non-responsive. Because if you talk to some of these eviction attorneys, they have to have those statuses in order for the court to take the eviction for non-payment of rent. So get the 3-day notice served, and file those state application from the landlord side, and get the timeline running, because like I said, it's taking months and months for them to even pick up these cases.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would definitely relay them the answer. So I have another question from Kathy, and say, well, in terms of eviction attorney, do you have specific ones that you use in different counties, or like you probably, you can email me somebody you use,
Sure.
so that I can relate to them.
Yeah, we use.
So I can.
Yeah, exactly. I can email that information over to you.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So if anybody's interested, they can always just reach out to me. I'll forward the information, because like maybe different counties a little bit different.
Yeah.
Right. So I think Matthew's question kind of like maybe they echo some of the slides that you already included about the association, because he is asking, what are your recommended resources? You mentioned a couple of associations, and how to best educate themselves as landlord, such as eviction, so that they will be kind of doing the right thing. And so
I mean,
sometimes it's protection.
Yeah, I mean, the California Apartment Association, being a member, you have access to all their forums, and of course, you can always email them questions. Of course, if you come down to where you need to evict a tenant, I always recommend just calling, if you don't really know, or you haven't done any, call your eviction attorney, and maybe even have them do the initial 3-day notice, and have them run the whole process through, so that way it's done correctly from the beginning. I mean, the last thing you want is to serve a notice and only to find out that you served the wrong notice, or you didn't put the correct information on it, or you don't have enough proof for at least violation. So maybe getting a head start with a consultation with the eviction attorney, and having them serve all the notices, that'll better be time spent and also money spent in the long run to get the tenant out faster.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, that's good advice.
Yeah.
And I think I also have a question about rent increase, because a number of my owners have not increased rent during the pandemic. So now, like since September 30th, we're supposed to be over with a tenant moratorium. So have you been increasing rent for your owners? And also,
yes.
like, is it a moderate? Yeah. So maybe you can give us some suggestions.
Yeah. So again, it's gonna. We're starting to raise rents again. So it's gonna depend what type of property you have. If it's a single-family home and it doesn't fall under AB 1482, there's really no rent control on those properties, so you can raise it whatever you want. Of course, you want to raise it within reason. If you have a good tenant, you want to keep them in place, or offer a couple options. If they sign a lease, you give them a smaller increase. If they want to absolutely stay month to month and you're okay with it, then give them a higher increase. If the property falls under a rent controlled jurisdiction, of course, you're only going to be able to raise that limit. And if your rents are low, I probably would go ahead and raise it to the limit, if it doesn't take it over market, just because you want to stay with the market and keep up with it. And if you don't raise it for 3, 4, 5 years, you're never going to get that increase back. You're always going to be able to only do that percentage in a 12-month period. So right now, if it's under AB 1482, Santa Clara County, Santa Cruz County is 4% CPI. So you can do a total of 9% right now. So 9% is a pretty good increase. So if you want to do the max, I would do the max if the rent's low. If it's borderline, you can do anything between 0 to 9%. So, and of course, you want to be fair to everyone in an apartment building. You don't want to give one tenant a huge increase just because you don't like them versus someone else. So I think you should always try to stay fair with everybody.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I have some clients that have properties in Oakland, and I sold some units, multiplexes to them before, and so they do. It seems to be maybe varying from county to county, city to city. Some of the owner, they never increase rent. It's still really, really low. We're talking about like $800 or $900. Those tenants probably would like to stay forever. And so, but then when they bought it, and I heard from my clients that they might be able to kind of recapture some of the rent increase in the previous year if they have not increased for 2 or 3 years, because the rent increase, say, in Oakland is only maybe 2% a year. So they might be able to recapture some. But does it apply to, say, Santa Clara County? Because most of the owner might not have increased rent in the last 2 years because of the pandemic.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with Oakland as far as their. I know it's pretty strict up there, and I think they're actually still under a moratorium out of the few cities in California. But I would definitely consult with either the apartment association or maybe even somebody who does tenant landlord law up there on if you can, like in San Jose, though they have the rent increase, there are certain things you can do to. If you just bought a property or your expenses went up drastically, you can try to petition the city for a bigger increase to make up for that. It takes a lot of paperwork and everything, but Oakland may have the same thing. I'm not 100% sure for that city. It's very
so as far as you go.
Yeah, very restrictive.
Yeah, there's no recapture. I see. Yeah, because I heard that it really varies from city to city. But as far as say Santa Clara County go, there might not be a chance to recapture, right?
San Jose does, and then other cities may, but I think if they're under AB 14H, like even 9% right now is a pretty good increase. So I'm not sure how successful you will be.
Yes, but 9% is already a good number. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and giving these totally housing departments and rent boards in some of these cities, I mean, they're very tenant friendly. I mean, even though they say they're neutral, but I find that most of them are very tenant friendly.
Yes. My client owns a property, again, it's in Oakland, it's a triplex, and then is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, but with a lot of stairs. It's Victorian style. And then the current resident actually is a young couple, but then during the pandemic, they have a baby. So it added, like another new member. And because of the stairs, my landlord, the owner that I know, that she wants to kind of like say, don't think it's a very safe environment for the baby, but because it's a family addition. So it's not a reason to kind of invite them out. Is that right?
No, I would not even mention that. I mean, you would be caught in a fair housing violation. It's going to be up to the parents to decide if, how they live in the home and what's safe and what's unsafe. It's the same thing as showing a property to, you walk up and it's a wheelchair person walks up to the property and you tell them, oh, I'm sorry, this is on the 2nd floor. I mean, you just violated fair housing. Maybe they can get up to the floor. So definitely don't say stuff like that. You would automatically be violating fair housing laws.
Yeah. That's what I told her, because it's a familial
status
condition.
Yep.
Yeah, the status. Yeah. Is there any other additional advice that you would like to share with us? Especially we kind of like still going through, hopefully, the tail end of the pandemic. But we do have a lot of landlords listening today. If there's any specific advice that you would like to share with our group, I'd love to take that. And then, like say, if I don't have any other question, we can round it up.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if your tenants aren't paying their rent, do your best to try to collect it from rent relief. Eventually, if rent relief program doesn't pay, the tenant still owes the money. And then eventually you'll be able to evict if, that's the case, but you may be left with some money owed if either the tenants don't pay up or the state doesn't pay up. But once that's done, take your losses and move on, and be sure to screen people when they move into your properties. Of all the people that I found that did a lot of rent relief applications, I mean, if I look back at the list, a lot of them or some of them were already issues before pre-COVID. That was their way of living. Their priorities haven't changed. So, and if I go back, and these are tenants that I may have acquired that were already in the properties. So again, pre-screening, make sure you get good people in there that are credit worthy, and that's going to save you a lot of headaches in the long run. So I can't say enough for screening people up front. You're going to, and make sure you have a good lease that you use, whether it's the Association of Realtors, the California Apartment Association, with all the addendums and the disclosures. So when you do need to get somebody out for lease violations, that you have all that stuff in there. But and of course, just follow up on maintenance. Make sure your properties look good, that you don't have any habitability issues. You don't want to have to deal with that kind of stuff, especially when you're trying to get somebody out for non-payment of rent and have them turn around and use some habitability issue that you haven't fixed, or they've been without hot water for a month or something crazy like that. So those are things that can be and will be used against you. So, yeah, and just make sure you enforce the lease.
Definitely.
Rent collections on time. Start charging late fees again if you haven't been charging them, and it's hopefully we're coming to an end of this, where the state is really controlling of what we can do. I mean, in reality, that's what they're doing.
Yes, I also hope so too. But like, since now we are in January, a lot of my clients are reporting taxes. Mm-hmm. So for the previous year, if for whatever reason they cannot collect rent, it did not become income, it become a loss. Mm-hmm. So it's an investment loss. Can they actually report the uncollected losses, the rent as a loss, in their, like say Schedule E? Have you had any of the clients mention about it? When you send out a 1099, since some of them may be not collecting rent.
Well, I've had clients ask that. I mean, that's probably going to be a question for your CPA, but if we didn't collect the rents, then they're not going to get it on their 1099. So in reality, their income is already low. So, I mean, it's almost the same effect. It's the same effect. So, they're not going to be able to claim rent that they never got. It would be the same as listing all the rents that you didn't collect at the bottom on the expense column. Yeah, it's the same effect. So your rents are going to show, your income is going to show low and your expenses are going to show high. So you're automatically got the write-off. So.
Yeah, because like mortgage, everything add up. Yeah, but unless next year if the government can repay the rent, so then if they can get the new rent and then the old rent together, then they would kind of like will increase the income more than regular, right?
Right. So 2022, if they get all the money this year, then of course this year is probably going to show higher income. But if you get the money, that's great news.
Yeah, but like say, have you heard anything that the government may run out of funds?
Yeah, there's been some articles in the Mercury News and some other publications that they say the funds are running low. And so I know the state was trying to get more funds, but that would be my only concern, is if they, with all these pending applications and, months go by that we're not getting the money, that come March or whenever, and they tell us, sorry, we ran out of money. So all these pending applications, you're out of luck. That's my only concern. Otherwise, if people have applied, most people are getting the rents paid. So, I mean, unless you're making $500,000 a year and you apply for rent relief, most likely you're not going to get it. But otherwise, all the applications that we put in the beginning, we got paid out. So I think there was only one person that got denied, and I think it's because he messed up on his application. If the money's there, I think we're going to get paid out on all these funds. But if they do run out of money, what will happen is, I imagine they're just going to say, sorry, So
So for those people who do not pay rent during the pandemic time, would they actually have an impact on the credit? If they're trying to apply for a new home, of course, many landlords would rather they move on, so they get a vacant unit back. So the tenants would that be having like poor credit because of the non-payment?
yeah, I guess technically during the moratorium and this time where they're applying for rent relief, you're not supposed to report them for bad credit. You'll have to be very careful when you're doing a verification of tenancy and really look at, okay, is this going to put you out on exposure for reporting a tenant that didn't pay late or apply for rent relief during the moratorium or even during the post-moratorium? If you're going to report them late, and if during the moratorium, technically you were not supposed to do it. So you don't want to put yourself at risk. I think you should do that on a case-by-case basis and see what the real story is. So, yeah.
Are we officially out of that tenant moratorium since the September 30th? We're supposed to have ended it.
Technically we are, yeah. But I mean, like I said, you can't, if you look at it, it's almost worse because before the moratorium, you were supposed to get 25%. They had to provide a COVID letter. Now they don't need to provide anything. They just stop paying their rent. You serve them a notice and you have to apply for rent relief funds. And now you have to wait for the state to tell you, okay, yeah, it's denied or it's non-responsive before you can evict. So, and it's taking long for them to even respond. So,
yeah, I totally agree. Yeah,
it's almost worse.
Yeah, it's getting worse. You see more than we do. You're handling so many property. Yeah, so that's something that we as California owners that we have to face because I think this state especially are more tenant friendly.
Yeah,
versus some of those.
What we found too is after the moratorium ended, we found that some people now are applying for rent relief, even though some of them didn't pay their rent, they're current on their rent, but yet they file an application for rent relief. So they're just trying to get some rent money out of the pot. So now we're looking at people who, I've even had tenants tell me, oh, we can pay it, but we want to see if we can get some rent paid for us. So now everybody's dipping into the pot to see if they can get some free rent. So.
But they have to show proof that they are actually financially impacted or lose a job or somehow before they get qualified, right? And
not really. I mean, honestly, if they apply for rent relief, the eviction attorneys are not going to evict them anyway. So, and the courts are not going to take the eviction without the state showing non-responsive or denied. So it's yeah.
I see. There's still some loopholes there.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, well, this definitely is very helpful. Yeah, like some of my attendees have said, very, very helpful and informative. I really appreciate the time. Thank you for taking the time on Saturday.
Okay. Thank you.
And so, yeah, we're going to send out to everybody. If you have other questions or you want to use Louis' company service, please feel free to reach out to him. Yeah. Thanks again and have a very good rest of the weekend. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.